Welcome back to another video. We're still on the angels and demons thing because I find this stuff fascinating. It's a little different from your regular paranormal, supernatural experiences and encounters. Um, but it's interesting to me. Always has been, always will be. So, first story. I met a former child soldier from Sudan in Nairobi a few years back. His name was Spoon, and Spoon and I really hit it off. We got to talking about his past every once in a while, and he slowly opened up to me. One day, though, he told me of the people he killed and how he killed them, and his eyes grew huge, and he related to me that if he could do it all again, he'd be more effective in his killing. I do think in that instant I saw a demon in her Spoon. It was one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. Yeah, I can explain that one. This isn't demons, someone replied, it's just people. Every person in the world is a killer at heart. Remove all the laws and social religious constraints, and you'd think just like him. There's quite a few examples and experiments that have been shown how scary people can get when you remove these constraints. Even people who deny they ever enjoy hurting others. It doesn't take a demon to enjoy killing. Scary, but I think I agree with that person as well. Next story. This is in my dream, so I'm breaking the rules here, sorry, but this is so intense that it stuck with me for years, even now. In the dream, I was in an old market street with paved stones and whatnot. It was later during the day, so everything's darker. I saw a bright light coming from the alley, so I turned around and I saw a guy with a sun face. It was bright, no pupils, kind of like this picture. Uh, they have a picture there, but I'm not linking to it, obviously. With a black robe around him. I don't know why, but I felt so intense that I felt it so intensely that I cried and knelt down. That feeling stuck with me. Even now, when I'm losing my faith due to personal crisis and doubt, I always remember that moment, and it pulls me just a little bit closer back each time. Next story. In my first Christian devotional, I wrote a poem called It Stinks No More. Here's the poem, the story behind the poem. Uh, Actually, I don't think, well, no, I might as well. Ever had a thought that would not go away? Just keeps reminding you over and over. This feeling is not positive. The thoughts keep going on and on. The little demon sits on a wall perch, dressed to the nines, or he thinks. Sitting there smiling with pride, continually reminding you of the thought. Wonder if the mind battle will ever end. As he sits there, the negative smell rolls off his clothes. He is unaware the person is praying for relief from the demon mentioned above. It goes on and on for days at a time, every moment of every day. Then there is a quiet, still voice that shows up and sits next to the negative ones. The angel is so peaceful. It looks over and says something quite simple. You stink, like hell. The smell describes the real place. It's not just general description like sulfur. All of a sudden, the negative thought was that this was continually on the person's mind. All of a sudden doesn't sting because the angel spoke. The prayer was answered. Don't be afraid of fear. You are one prayer away from realizing you are not alone. When you have an attitude of prayer, pray and you realize you are not alone. Now, the story behind the poem was, while dreaming one summer night, the Holy Spirit helped me finally get a nagging demon from stopping to tempt me on everything. Lust, negative thoughts, and every other temptation I can think of went on for weeks and months, if I recall. I remember the demon was sitting on a brick wall that was about 3 feet high, sitting there whistling. As the demon whistled, the constant nagging feeling would strengthen. The demon was dressed very nicely, sitting on a brick wall along some random street on a sunny day. While sitting there, the odor of sulfur and stink of hell was coming off his dapper suit, which he didn't seem to be aware of. When the angel floated down and sat next to him, the little angel sniffed literally and said, You stink like hell. When the angel whispered these words, almost instantly the constant a negative feeling disappeared, and I was inspired to write this story. It was one of the first real times I recall the Lord speaking to me directly and answering a prayer. The statement contained only a few words, yet they were so calming and brought relief. From then on, I yearned to hear the small, still voice regarding other things in my life. It was an incredible experience, and one I still remember years later. The next story. The warrior angels I have seen have been spectacular, much different than messengers and other types. They have razors either on or as primary feathers and other types of armor on what can be considered a bird's elbow, that first joint. That is much more of a blunt force weapon as a fist. It makes sense when you think about the horrible creatures they must battle with. When they use their wings as weapons, it's like thousands of swords wading into the front lines. They are serious in demeanor and not as conversational. There are differences in sizes, too, it seems. The angels we've had with us since we were conceived have a very different purpose and aren't as tall or wide. I don't want to get into what demons and shades look like. Too many bad memories. Suffice it to say, the renditions you see in movies are pretty accurate, but not near as bad as some of the real old ones. This one says, my grandmother did. I'm assuming saw something. My grandmother regularly practiced witchcraft. She truly believed she had certain powers, and many of my relatives on her side were 100% sure they had seen her successfully do weird things from astral projection to nearly killing someone. She died before I was born, but I have been left with many stories from various relatives and my own father. She said she saw demons everywhere. The better she got at witchcraft, the more they would come after her. She described them as small imp-like creatures who were all over the place. The more they were after her, they told her that she belonged to them because she practiced black magic, and they would get angry and attack her when she refused to do what they wanted. When she refused to do what they wanted. This sounds crazy, I know. My dad told me that he lived with her until he was 20, and even at that age, her house terrified him. He slept in the living room watching the front door at night because he felt so uneasy. He believed they attacked her because in the morning she would have long, bleeding claw marks on her body, with dirt and leaves all over her bed. Eventually, my grandmother developed cancer and was soon dying. She had quit witchcraft some years before because the events began getting worse and worse and she was too scared. Shortly before her death, she said she had the most vivid dream of Satan chasing her through a grove, saying that she was his and that she would be in hell forever. He was faster than her and eventually got her, but at the moment, she said a wall of light separated the two of them, and in between them she saw an angel appear. The angel held out his hand, told Satan he could not have her, and that she belonged to them in heaven. After waking, she was totally changed. In the few remaining weeks she had left, she decided to convert and had a priest meet her at the hospital to teach her about God because she was too ill to attend any church. Soon after, she died, happily. Well, that's interesting. Honestly, there's a lot to say about that one, but it's somebody else's experience, and I'm not going to go there right now. Next story. Just a short while ago, I saw Jesus in a dream. It was unlike anything I had ever experienced before. I had been dreaming about getting away, escaping from different things or situations all night. I was getting close to finally getting out, but there was a group of it that I just thought were criminals or robbers of some sort between me and freedom. As I was literally reaching for the gate to open it, one of the men grabbed my arm, and I knew it was simply over. The man who grabbed me turned me around, holds my right arm. Before he starts to walk over me to the center of the group, he just looks at me. In that instant, that person, Jesus, was so much more vivid than anything else in the dream, or anything in real life for that matter. He was very, very handsome in a rugged sort of way, and was nothing like either the Western pictures of Jesus or the reconstruction of typical people from Israel during that era. I just knew without a doubt that it was him. Even knowing, walking toward what I feared most, and knowing that there was no way out of whatsoever, it did not matter one bit. I had complete and full peace and trust in the person leading me out of there, right then. I've dealt with bouts of severe depression. I think the dreams mean that I have to give up trying to escape, get out of my life on my own terms and time. My problems are not solved by any means after the dream, and the intensity of the feelings have lessened. Even so, now I really know that whatever I have to face, with Jesus there, it'll be okay, no matter what. Next story. My friend was in high school sleeping and woke to a growling noise. He woke up and looked in the mirror in the corner and saw a being with horns staring at him growling. My friend says, in the name of Christ, you are not allowed to be here. Leave, now. As soon as he finished, he said his eyes started glowing like embers and this thing lunged at him, and a white flash appeared and it was gone. He couldn't sleep for days after that, but kept praying and thanking God. Next one. I'm pretty sure that I've seen a demon. My mother was a very nice person when we were growing up and is doing much better now, but I was convinced that we had something attached to our house when we were growing up. My parents have since moved. The demon I saw manifested as a large black dog-shaped thing that looked lizard-like with red eyes. I saw this several times as a young teen. Personally, I think it was feeding off the anger in the house. Anger has a kind of power to it when you use it to control other people. Demons like to feed off of it and use you to cause strife if they can. Demons don't have any real power unless you allow it, which is why my mother and I have done so in the past. We no longer have those issues. It's interesting. Next story. I'm a little late to this, but anyway, my husband and I moved to a new town about 3 years ago, and my husband's new job. I didn't have any work lined up before moving and was unemployed for about 7 months, so I was home by myself a lot. We moved into these newer townhouses as part of an old town, which I have no idea if that makes any difference. Anyway, anytime I was by myself watching TV, I could see someone standing in the room out of the corner of my eye. This person was tall and dark. I'd try to look directly at them, but they would always disappear. One night, my husband was out with some friends, so I went to bed without him. Some time after falling asleep, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I rolled over thinking that he had gotten home, but instead it was the same dark figure above me. I sat straight up and he disappeared again. I rolled back over, afraid to look where he was, and he just sort of freaked out by what had happened. I know I felt someone grab my shoulder, and it was very real. 5 minutes later, my husband gets home, so I shoot out of bed to greet him and talk to him. After that instance, I never saw the shadowy figure any more. I never got any sort of feeling that he was good or evil either. It was just there watching me. I also haven't told anyone about the depth of this either. I told my husband that I had been seeing someone in the room with me, but I don't think he really believed me. Someone replies with, if these encounters that are the most interesting, being awake, seeing with your own eyes, and having a feeling or a touch. Thank you for having the courage to share because, as you know, such a story can be unbelievable to others. That's very true. All right, next story. So take a quick scroll on a lot of stories involving angels. Here's our encounter with a demon, spirit, whatever you want to call it. Background. Our church had 3 family members die in a farming accident, one of which was a professional rugby player, so it made worldwide news in rugby circles and huge local news. This is in the UK. At the time of the funeral, we had lots of TV coverage and had a great chance to share what we believe as a church, etc. Lots of positive press, but to put it that way. About a month later, my dad is a janitor at our church, and one night, while doing security, he caught a reflection of someone on the balcony. So he turned to see and saw what he described as a shadow standing. It spoke to him in a voice, but not an audible voice, more like a voice you think in, but you didn't recognize it, so it wasn't as if it was making sense to him. It told him, "Man of God, I'm coming for you." A few weeks later, he was talking to our pastor, who was pretty new to the church. They're great friends, and he was telling him about this. As he was mid-story, the pastor starts drawing on a pad he picked up. While my dad was finishing the story, the pastor turned the drawing to him and said, "Was this him?" My dad confirmed that this was remarkably similar, too detailed to be drawn from my dad's description. My pastor told him that the same demon had sit where my dad was sitting about a week ago and told him that he was a spirit of division, and would do everything he could to split the church. Unfortunately, we had quite a split in the church about a year ago, due to issues people had discerning scripture. That's usually what gets churches. To me and my dad, it's not a coincidence, but that's just us. Some people dismiss the encounter as total crap. Others believe it completely. And there was a reply. If you or anyone you know ever happen to have a demonic encounter that was really similar to this, be sure to take authority over that demon and to drive it out in the name of Jesus. Demons and evil spirits aligned with the enemy have no choice but to go away when they are stepping into the authority that God gave us through the blood of Christ that was shed on the cross. That's good advice. Next story. Yes, I have. After a blazing row with my mother, who would not accept or believe that the misery the people of our neighborhood were being subjected to was caused by the conservative government, again, this is UK, I ran upstairs to my bedroom in floods of tears. I jumped on my bed and put my head in my hands, sobbing. Then I felt something. I lifted my head to my hands, and there was a young man standing next to the bed. He was tight. He was a tight, dark. I'm assuming this is supposed to. He had a tight, dark beard and tight, dark curly hair. He was wearing a weaved cloak tied with a thick belt and large buckle. He had a crook in his right hand and was leaning down, tending something which I could not see, but it buffeted him and surrounded him. It was his flock. As I look up and look at him, he looks at me. His gaze is tense but comforting. He doesn't let up even though his flock is jostling him, and I am transfixed by him. He leans in toward me as he gets closer. His eyes sink to the back of his head, and I am staring into the voids of his eye sockets. Then I can only see the void, and then I am alone again. 25 years ago that happened, and I've come to understand and accept what it is and what it means. There is another realm so close, yet not part of this physical reality. That one's a little creepy, to be honest with you. Next story. This was weird. I was working on my grandfather's shop. It's a 2-story building. First floor is all fireplaces, and second floor is all fireplace is filing cabinets. Second floor is only half the size of the first floor, and there's a short wall around the edge of it. So if you look over it, you can see the whole first floor. Sometimes you can hear the floor buckling and creaking in heat or wind. Anyway, I was working on the bottom floor, and all of a sudden I heard choral music and voices. They weren't singing words of any kind. It was just a vowel sound that I could hear as clear as day. I asked my grandfather if he could hear it too, and he thought I was going bonkers. It lasted a few minutes, then stopped. Not sure if that's what you were talking about, or what the noises were, but that's my experience. Next one. When I was still a boy, I remember waking up in the middle of the night for no reason. Yet I felt that something was about to happen. As I sat up in a white light, brighter than I'd ever seen before, shined through my bedroom window. This light was surrounding a person, and instinctively I knew it was Jesus. He appeared as a bearded, somewhat rugged man clothed in pure white. At first I was so very badly wanted to say something to him, but I could not. His presence was so shocking that I found myself unable to speak or move or do anything other than have it look on in awe. But before I could have further attempted to speak, Jesus spoke these words to me: "If you keep this up, you shall be in paradise." The sound of his voice was deep and powerful, and while I could hear his voice echoing, it was perfectly clear. His tone was gentle and reassuring, much like a parent speaking to their child. As suddenly as he appeared, he was gone once he finished his message to me. I remember immediately thinking, how did that just happen to me? It remains the most vivid, intense, and puzzling memory I have. I initially wondered what Jesus could have meant by keeping this up. I looked back, I'm not sure this was an act of encouragement. At that age, I had many difficulties being bullied in school, and while I did try to get help from my parents and teachers, it never seemed to stop anything. For whatever reason, though, I did not try to take matters into my own hands and get back at the students responsible. That was a good thing, too, because once I was able to overcome the bullying years later, I actually got along with and had positive experiences with the same people who had once picked on me. While I was still dealing with the consequences, low self-esteem and difficulty expressing my feelings to others, on top of significant chronic depression, I am very glad I was able to stave off any bitterness towards the ones who bullied me. Thank the Lord for coming to me when he did. It showed that I am indeed worthy to him, and that there's always been a reason to have hope. The troubles of this life are temporary. Eternal life awaits all those who believe in Jesus, and is certainly worth struggling for. Pretty good. Pretty good advice. Next story. I know this is 7 years old. This is an old thread, like I said, but I just came across the experience from you, and it's lovely. I want to become more like you. How did you not hold bitterness at all? Currently, I'm kind of going through the same thing. However, unlike you, I've become a very bitter person, and this is just somebody responding about this. Okay, sorry. Let's see. Let's do this last one here. Ready? Fellow atheist here. I saw Jesus when I was around 3. My mom was in the kitchen watching me wait for my neighbor friend in the front yard. I saw Jesus descend from heaven and stop in front of me. No words were spoken. After a minute or so, he went right back up. Neither my mom nor my neighbor friend, who appeared shortly after, saw this. I drew a picture of what I saw, which was surprisingly the white Jesus from my children's books, same color sash, etc. The feeling I experienced would be experienced later in my life during the sleep paralysis dreams, which it is an important situation. I am rendered mute and blind in my dreams. I think as a child, something like my dream experiences now have triggered in my brain. I was a Christian for many years, though, and after that, and thought maybe God was telling me one day I would be an atheist and turn my back on thinking Jesus is real, hence it being proven to me as a child. I thought I would later reconvert and do amazing things for God, since he clearly cared a lot about me, not being an atheist. I don't think I will ever go back like teenage me expected. Okay, so there we go. Lots of experiences, lots of things going on. I'm going to continue doing some of these videos, I think, because I actually do enjoy them. And spirituality is quite interesting, and it's nice to hear other people's thoughts and opinions on it. But if you don't mind, please like, share, subscribe, comment, do all the things. And go look up another video if you don't mind. I'd appreciate that. Anyway, we'll talk to you later, and bye.